Hello and welcome back to Dylan's Triathlon Journal. Today I'm going to be doing a review of my 2021 race season as well as a quick preview to my 2022 race season. I did 5 races in 2021 and for each race I'm going to give about a minute summary. I'm going to go over one major lesson that I learned from each one. The first race I was going to do this year was supposed to be in May. Unfortunately that one got canceled, so the first race I wound up doing was in June. The race in June was my first Olympic distance race, and going into it I was definitely a little bit nervous. Now, the nerves did affect me a little bit on the swim. I think I went out a little bit too fast. I was able to hone it in and kind of figure out a good pace about halfway through the swim, and I was fortunately able to come out of the swim in first place. Now, going onto the bike, I still was maintaining my lead. It was a 2-lap course with 2 turnarounds, so I was actually able to see how far behind me everyone was. So I had a good idea of how fast I was going compared to the guys in second and third place, which was really valuable. Now, going to the run was where I really learned my first valuable lesson in triathlon, and that is do not neglect the nutrition, right? We hear all the time that nutrition is the 4th discipline in triathlon, and I had not quite learned that lesson yet, but I definitely learned it in my first race. On the bike, I was taking in water, but I don't think I had enough nutrition or calories going in. I had UCAN with me, but I don't think I measured it out correctly, and it really showed on the run. The run was an out and back, 3.1 miles down, 3.1 miles back. And when I was turning around that cone at 3.1 miles, I was just done. I had nothing left really, and I saw the guy coming up on me, and as soon as he passed me, I just had no fight left in me. So I did wind up getting second, which is excellent for a first Olympic distance triathlon, but I was a little upset because the way that I got second wasn't great. It was avoidable, right? If I had better nutrition, I would have done better. But it was a very valuable learning lesson for my first triathlon. My second race of the season was a lot of fun. This one was a sprint distance. It was actually held at an amusement park in the middle of the week. I have to say the atmosphere around this one was a whole lot of fun. Now, going out into this one, I knew that I could go a little bit faster on all 3 disciplines, right? Because they're a little bit shorter. But again, I definitely went out a little bit too fast on the swim. It turns out that the guy who was in front of me was actually a collegiate swimmer. I didn't know that, but I was trying to stay with him and ultimately dropped back about halfway through. But I got out of the water in about second place. Going onto the bike, I knew that I definitely had at least one guy ahead of me. So I was really trying to crank it, trying to catch up to him. The bike was only 12 miles, so I knew that I had to pedal pretty quickly to catch up to him. And around mile 11, I did catch him and eventually passed him going to transition, but he was right on my tail, so we basically came in at about the same time. Now, once again, going onto the run, this is where I learned another valuable lesson, and that is never forget your bib. I was going through transition between the bike and the run, and I was about to exit, and I looked to my left, and my competitor was putting on his bib, and I was like, oh no, I completely forgot my bib. So I might have yelled an expletive or two there, but I had to run back and get my bib, and by the time I was coming out, right, I'd already lost about 30 seconds. So I was not able to catch him, and actually someone passed me on the run, so I wound up getting third. Once again, not bad for a second race of the year, but the way that it happened, I was pretty disappointed with because it was a very avoidable circumstance. Going into my third race, now I learned 2 very valuable lessons, and I do think that they both really, really helped me going into this race. Now, this race was my biggest race of the year, meaning that it was the most people I was racing against. It was the New Jersey State Triathlon, so there were about 1,000 people in that race, and I had never experienced anything like that. One thing going into this race is that because of COVID restrictions, they wanted to limit the amount of people that would be in transition at the same time. So they actually randomized who would be in each wave. So I wound up being in wave 17 out of 18, which meant that on the swim, I was constantly passing people, which it did feel good because, you know, you're passing people. But at the same time, there are some people that I was like quite literally swimming over. So I did feel really bad about that because I know that being swam over probably isn't the greatest feeling. But I was just trying to do my best and go as fast as I could on the swim. And this really was my big takeaway from this race, is that in these bigger races, when you have thousands of people racing, you know, you might be in wave 15 and you're going to have to deal with passing people. And it's just part of the race, right? Going into the bike, it was a lot more the same. I was constantly passing people the whole time there. It was a little bit of a turny course, so it was kind of learning how to navigate, okay, when should I pass someone? You know, am I going to run into them? Are they going slower than me? Just kind of being able to calculate what I should do at what moment in the race. Getting off the bike and going to the run, again, it was a lot more the same. I was still passing a lot of people, but this time, instead of kind of being a tough aspect of the race, it felt really good because I had not had a good run going into this race. My previous 2 runs were, you know, so-so. So I did feel like I really wanted to have a good run today, and I had good nutrition, and I remembered my bib, so I was already doing better this race than I was my other 2. The run did wind up going really well, and I had my best run of the season. I wound up finishing 7th overall, which I was really, really happy about. I was technically first in my age group, although I believe the second and third place were technically in my age group, so the way I look at it, I kind of got third in my age group. But regardless, a very good finish. 7th out of 1,000 was something that I was really, really happy about. Coming off of that race, I was feeling super good about my season, but my next race was definitely my toughest. This race was in Atlantic City, and although some people find running and racing on flat ground is probably the easiest for them, I train in the hills. I live in forest basically, so this race for me was a little bit more difficult because it's not terrain that I'm used to. I actually started this race off really well. I came out of the water about 2.5 minutes in front of everyone, and if you haven't been able to tell so far, my swim and my bike are actually two of my better disciplines in triathlon, so heading into the bike, I was feeling really good. Now, on the bike, it was mostly flat. There are a few hills for turnarounds, but other than that, completely flat. Not much shade because we were actually on a highway, which was actually pretty interesting and kind of fun. But I was definitely sweating a lot. So I'd kind of figured out my nutrition after my first race, and I was taking a lot in because I definitely had to replenish. The run started off down a road, and then we went onto a boardwalk. I was actually feeling pretty good. I was actually going at a decent clip. And then at one point, we actually went onto the sand, and that was pretty tough. I just tried to stay within myself, just taking nice quick steps, not trying to overexert myself, almost like I was going up a hill. But that definitely threw off my cadence a little bit, and that was about 2 miles into the run. But after that, I really just hit a wall. There's a turnaround at about the 4-mile mark, and as I turned around, I knew that going into the run, I had a huge lead, probably about 4 minutes. I saw the guy that was behind me, and I feel like that's just kind of broke me. I feel like my mental aspect in this race was not the best, and that was my biggest learning experience from this race. No matter where you are, the races might start off great, and you might hit a wall halfway through the race, but you have to be able to be mentally tough to get through the whole race. So I definitely hit that mental wall, and I wound up getting 5th after leading with 2 miles left. So again, 5th is pretty good, but I was pretty disappointed with myself because I did let up mentally, and that was something that I struggled with for probably the next 2 weeks. I was really disappointed in myself. But I regrouped. I knew that I had one more race coming up within the next couple months, so I really want to focus on that. Now, this was a fantastic bounce back race for me after being super disappointed for my last race. This, by far, was the best race of the season for me. The conditions didn't start out great in this race. It was super windy, and we were in the bay, so the waves were pretty big while we were swimming, but luckily it was an out and back, so on the way out, we were going straight into the waves, but on the way back, we got to use them as a little bit of momentum. Now, like I said a little bit earlier, normally the swim is one of my strong suits, but there are some very good swimmers in this race, and I only wound up coming out of the water in 5th. Now, I had a really good transition from the swim to the bike, and I actually came out onto the bike in 3rd place. So I didn't know this in the race, so I was just trying to gain ground because I knew that there were more people ahead of me. Eventually, I passed one guy, and I didn't see the motorcycle, so I knew that there was still one guy ahead of me. So I was just trying to find him, and then probably about 18, 19 miles into the race, I finally saw the guy that was in 1st place, and I wanted to try to strategically pass him. It didn't quite work out because once I passed him, he stayed on me until we got back to transition. So I basically got into transition, tied for 1st. Now, the run has been my Achilles heel all season, so I really wanted to just run my race on the run. I got out on the run again. We were tied for 1st, and this guy was running a little bit faster than me, and I knew that I just had to let him go. Now, as a competitor, this is probably one of the hardest things to do, but I knew for myself to be able to make it through the full 10K, I had to just let him go. So he got away from me, but I was feeling really good on the run. By far the best I have felt on a run all year. Now, another guy came up on me and unfortunately passed me again. He was just going much, much faster than me, so I just had to let him go again. But I kept him pretty much in my sights the rest of the race. I wound up finishing this race in 3rd, and although I was in 1st at one point, I was so much happier about this race because I felt like, as a whole, this was just my best race by far. Again, on the swim, bike, and run, I actually had my fastest splits of the season. Now, that could be due to the conditions, the course, and anything, but again, to PR in all 3 disciplines in one race, that's a great race. So I took the 3rd place podium finish, and I was super happy about that. Now, I was supposed to have one more race this season in December, but I suffered a foot injury at the end of October, and unfortunately I was not able to recover in time for it. But I was able to defer my entry to next year, and that's a great segue into my races for next year. To start off the season, I'm going to have a race in May. This is actually the one that got canceled last year. I was able to defer my enrollment in it to this year. So at the end of May, I'll have my first race. It's going to be an Olympic distance race. I'm really looking forward to getting back out there after a bunch of months. In June, I'm going to be doing another Olympic distance race. It's going to be up in New York. I'm going to be using this as a tune-up for what I'm calling my A- race of the season, which is going to be that New Jersey State Triathlon again. Now, last year I got 7th place, but this year I get to be in the elite group. So I'll actually have a much better idea of where I'm at in the race as we're going. So I'm really looking forward to that. My goal is to win that race. After the New Jersey State Triathlon, I have my A race for the season, which is the Olympic Distance Age Group Nationals. So my goal in this is to get top 3 in my age group, and it's something I really believe that I can do, and I'm super excited for it. After that, something else I'm super excited for is I'm going to be doing my first 70.3. For those of you who do not know, that is a half Ironman distance at the end of September. So I'm really looking forward to that too. And to round out the season, I'm going to do the race I was supposed to do in December, which is Florida 70.3. And that should be super exciting as well. So I hope you enjoyed listening to the review of my 2021 season and are excited as I am for my 2022 season. Thank you to everyone who watched my first video. My next video is going to be on Sunday, recapping my first week of training in 2022. I hope you guys are as excited as I am, and I will see you then. Bye.